at the end of the day, making women feel like shit is not going
Oh,
to make their kids sick less.
well, thank you so much, Jodie. It feels a little bit funny being role reversed. And I know that you don't necessarily, well, you don't do hair anymore at all, do you?
No, I do not.
Okie dokie. So, firstly, I guess, would you like to tell people who you are?
Yeah, so I was a career hairstylist for 15 years. My mom was a salon owner, so I grew up like I always like people think I'm joking when I say that I teethed on perm rods. But literally like she bought her first salon in Sheffield when we lived in England still when she was 21 and she had me when she was 25. So she literally like had me in the salon with her clients and it was like a little, what like the salons that you
You, yeah.
picture like on Coronation Street, basically. Like
Yes,
the
yes, yes,
community
yes.
and her clients would be rocking me in the little thing. And
Oh.
so I was a stylist for 15 years
Mhm.
before I stepped away in 2020 to go into education and my marketing company full time. So that's kind of mine. And I did have my son. So I'd done a stint in sales for a distributor. And then I had my son and just it didn't work with like lifestyle things. My husband
Mhm.
was working out of town at the time. Someone I knew opened a salon and I went back to work behind the chair when Mason the first time when he was 5 months old and it didn't stick and then the second time when he was like around just over a year old.
Okay, okay. So you've got a good view of it all, really.
Yeah, I've definitely done the being a mom working behind the chair and it was very very difficult at times.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a bit about your time in the industry before you had kids. What was it like? Where did you work? Just paint us a picture of your career before. It's Mason, isn't it?
Yes.
So tell us what that was like.
So I started in the hair industry very, very young. I actually, the high school I went to had a cosmetology program. So half of my high school credits came from cosmetology. I was doing like makeup for plays and hair for plays. And I was doing like, we had kind of like a cosmetology lab, it was called, where we would, do color and all of that kind of stuff, which led to some extremely unfortunate incidents for me personally. Thankfully, my mom was also a stylist and could fix it. Don't give teenagers, untrained teenagers, hair color and expect the results to be predictable, is what I learned there.
No more.
um, and then basically, I was working as a server. So I started serving at a breakfast restaurant when I was like 14, so really quite young. And then there was a salon in the same building. So I want to say it was definitely before I turned 18. I started working as a receptionist as well at the salon because I was going to do an apprenticeship route. So in Canada, basically, there's two options to get your hair license. And there's like you go to school for, I think it's 9 months, and then you do your hours afterwards, or you can do
Okay.
essentially like a work release program. So you work in the salon, you need more hours. So I think in total I ended up doing like 2,800, maybe not quite that many, but it was a lot. It's like 2 full years. And because I had done all of my cosmetology in high school, I was able to challenge one of them. So I ended up doing most of my training on the job. So I was doing the blowouts, doing the toning, doing all of those things, as well as starting to take a few clients here and there. And that was kind of how I got started in the hair industry. And then I moved around quite a few times. So I went to a
Mhm.
salon that was horrendous directly after that salon because it closed. It was part of like a massive corporation. It ended up they just kind of dissolved that particular branch and I ended up going to work for one of my mom's past coworkers and it was a very chaotic experience. I found myself in a lot of startup salons and I found myself embroiled in the chaos of that a few times. And so after 8 months, like I got my license and I could not wait to get out. Like I was so I actually ended up moving cities and I went to one of the like looking back, and I'll be totally honest, I like this opportunity was so good. The salon I worked at was so amazing. The man that owned the salon was just, he loved the industry. And like, it was kind of like a family run type situation. Like his dad had started it, all of those things. It was like that was the first time I saw like a real training program. So I started training apprentices as part of my job. And he taught me so many things. And I remember, I had just moved cities. I was 18, maybe 19, and I was just wanting to like, live the big city life and go out all the time. And looking back, I'm like, oh, like I feel so bad for my boss at the time, who was such an incredible person. Like I remember him pulling me aside one day being like, Jodie, like I heard your client. He's like, I can tell, like, when you're coming in and you're not feeling your best. Like I would never show up like super hungover, but it's like when you're 19 and you're living on your own for the first time, it was not a great scene. And I remember him saying, like, I just sat and I listened in the waiting room and I heard your client talking about how excited they were and mentioning your name and what a great experience they had last time and da 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 da. And he's like, this isn't just about how good you do hair. Like, don't blow it, like, and I remember being like, I did continue to kind of blow it a little bit. I wish that was like the aha moment.
That was my light bulb.
Yeah, I wish that it was, but it did end up being that later on, right? And so, that was one of the things where I learned a lot in that job, and I worked at a few commission salons. I went to a very structured Aveda salon after that for when I moved back home again for several years before. There's a lot of moving in my early 20s. I was very much, I love to travel now, but like when I was in my early 20s, I was looking for my thing, right? I wanted to
Oh
try,
yeah, of
I wanted to
course.
fail as much as I could. And I did do that. So I moved, I want to say I
Congrats on
moved
that.
city like probably 5 times in a 2 year period, like from one province to another. So picture like London to Newcastle, actually further and back, and then maybe like
Oh,
London to Ireland. And then like, so that's kind of like a picture of what I was doing in that early
major
time.
moves then. So
Uh,
major moves.
Big moves. One of the things that taught me
Mm.
though is the rebuild process and building a clientele, right? And all of those types of things. So
Mhm.
eventually when and again, like I've always looked for things that would allow me to travel and would bring in my passions and all of those kinds of things. And so that was my like play around, find out, test things era when I was in my early 20s. And I ended up doing a stint, like I said, in sales. And so that was very much like I wanted this job because I wanted to travel. And I was like, I've moved a lot. Maybe, I could try something where I get to travel without moving every 5 minutes, because it does get to be quite a bit for, logistically. So that's what I was doing for a while when I met my husband and we got together, and I, in short order kind of had my son. And then that's when I went back behind the chair. Now, to make a very long story short, because I know this is it's going on a while now, but basically I got back behind the chair and I was working at a salon that had no clientele. No, it was in a brand new area. It was still under construction, didn't have any kind of reputation yet. So a lot of those classic things that I would do to build a clientele were no longer an option. And I, for the first time in my life, I now had like a daycare bill to pay because someone had to watch my son while I was at work. And so that was when I fell in love and got obsessed with marketing. I got to try so many things early on. I got to fail so many times. And I was living out of town now. So I had a 40-minute drive into the salon, and I used that commute to just listen to marketing podcasts. I was taking webinars on my days off. Like, I just wanted to know everything about marketing. And I was able to really build my clientele very, very quickly using Instagram. And once I got intentional about it, I was like, ooh, I can call in a particular kind of client. How freaking cool is that? Because I'd had to do things not that way so many times. So that's why, like, I kind of date myself quite a bit, but when people complain a lot about social media, which I get, there's a lot required now, and I'm so not invalidating that, but I'm like, I remember how hard it was pre-social media to build a clientele. And so that,
100% out on
yeah,
the street, out on the street, and don't come back until you've got clients.
yes, exactly.
And the trauma.
Totally, right? Or like that new client anxiety where someone sits in your chair and you have no idea, right? Whereas with social,
100%.
there's such a
You're you're already vetting
pre-trust.
them. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. So
Amazing.
yeah, so that's when, within 18 months of going back to work, I had gone independent and I was able to do things like fill my chair without like it with an Instagram story. Like if I had a cancellation, I was like, no worries, like post an Instagram story, it would fill. And so that's kind of my journey, but long-winded journey behind the chair.
Love long-winded. Don't worry about that. Okie dokie. So you filled up your column and were you working full time?
So initially, I had gone back part time, but I want to say I ended up adding a lot more days kind of out of necessity because I was like getting really busy and I was like, this is
Wow.
awesome. I'm also someone who likes to work. Like, I like to work, I like to make money. No bones about it. That is what I enjoy doing a lot of the time. So, it wasn't an imposition for me to have to like add more days. Obviously it was a little hard balancing with my little guy, but I did end up sort of working part-time. And then once I went independent, I got down to like, but I was working Monday to Friday. So that's something also to be said, that because my husband was working out of town, I wasn't doing the evenings and weekends thing because I couldn't.
Yeah,
So,
sure. So you were
um,
filling the column that everyone says is impossible, basically.
exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
then I ended up dropping down to 4 days at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I love that. So, what did you think it would be like having a child as a hairdresser? Had you seen, people on your journey with kids? What did it look like over there? Was it similar as it is here?
I hadn't seen, I mean, aside from my mom, obviously,
Hmm.
and I never felt any type of way really, like, but my mom was
Okay.
always the salon owner, like when I was growing up. So we would just go to the salon a lot of the time. Like even when we moved to Canada, she opened a salon here. And so then we were just kind of like at the salon. So I think one of the things that I found really difficult, and this came like a little bit later, but like the salon that I ended up leaving, I remember one of the things that was really, really hard, what I expected is kind of like a lot more empathy, I think.
Yes, I
And
think
it was
that.
it was very different. Like I think the hardest part, and I remember calling my mom and being just and her just being like, because I didn't see it as a kid, right? I didn't see her stressing out because I was sick and she had to stay home and like so that wasn't something that I really was familiar with. Like that I think was like the hardest part for me, which I know is not the question you asked, but like I can't really remember, to be honest, like what I expected versus what was different. But I think like the difficulty of like having something, because when especially when I came up as a stylist, I think we're similar age. So like
Mhm.
probably when both of us came up, it was like almost a badge of honor to like push through when you were not feeling good and like all of that kind of stuff,
Still is. There's
which is
still such a huge part of it, and
right.
the competition of it. And I've done 17 heads today. Now I'm like I've done
Yeah.
two. I'm
Yeah.
knackered. You know, it's yeah the hustle. It's really ugly. I'm very
And
anti-hustle.
yeah, it was like once you have a child, like your childcare provider doesn't care that you have a full day by the chair. And I remember just feeling this like guilt of like, and I don't even know what was harder, honestly, like having to call in sick when I was an employee or having to reschedule on my clients when I was an independent. I think probably like for me, it was like easier once I went independent because although you have to deal with the
100%.
logistics, but just like I remember thinking, and I remember calling to my mom, like saying, like, what do they want me to do? Like leave my 2-year-old home by himself?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have
Literally.
help, you know? Like my mom lives on the other side of the country, so that's another thing. Like I didn't have anyone near me, and I think that was like the most difficult thing. And the this pressure of like having to balance everything, that was another
100%.
thing that's
And
really hard.
smile and be really
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity
Yeah.
while you're doing it. I do think it's really unfair that gloss that we put over this, because actually
Oh yeah.
it's really difficult, and it's okay if you want to cry.
Yeah.
Right.
And some of the things that people will say to you too, like I remember I was working at a salon and this was like another woman. So it's interesting actually because like all of my I can't think back to any like aside from in sales where there was some real whatever things that were like I was just like ugh, that's why I ended up leaving that industry was because of like certain salon owners and how they would treat sales reps, and I was just like this is not for me. This is hugely problematic. And one of the things that I remember being said to me by a salon owner was I'm not going to hire any more moms because like honestly it's just like all about their kids all the time. And
Yeah, I've
like
been told this. I've had this. Talk about your kids all the time. It's like I kind of human, you know.
yeah, like he's kind of important to me.
It's kind of a big deal. Sorry that
Yeah.
you weren't hugged enough, but I'm going to talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's wild, isn't it?
it really is. And like I remember going through, it's interesting because like I won't say who this was. Someone very close to me was I was going through like a secondary infertility journey. And I remember like, having all these horrible like invasive tests and then having to go and do like a 10-hour day behind the chair, like all these things. And I remember like one of these people that I worked with that I was very close to, like just she was also going through an infertility journey. And like the person who owned the salon would say things like, well, what a waste of money to like go through IVF and stuff like that. And I'm like, I just feel like, would anyone say this in another workplace? Like,
Believe that hairdressing for so long has just been legalized abuse. It is, and people don't. That's another part of what I do is
mhm.
showing that it's really bad.
Yeah, yeah,
I personally, I've been very fortunate with my children, but I donated my eggs,
yeah.
and so I went through the same journey,
Yeah,
but meant very different emotionally. And the
yeah,
way like the bosses treated me, and you're
yeah,
like, are you? I swear, Jodie, are you fucking mental? Like, I'm not doing this for a pat on the back, but this is so that somebody else can have a fucking child. And what?
yes.
Who didn't hug you? Because honestly, oh,
Yeah. And it's funny because I have been like early on in my career, like that first salon I talked about, like I saw an example of a salon owner who was very supportive over the staff, like very, like very human. Like, and that was like
literally it.
yeah, and that was such a beautiful thing. And then the next one I
Yeah.
went to, like I remember there was a woman who was like pregnant and I was like 21 at the time. So I had my son at 25, so I guess it wasn't that different. But I remember thinking like how crazy is this that like we weren't allowed to drink water at the pass and we're not allowed to sit. You weren't even
What's the
allowed to
part? Oh no, no
like the
sitting.
color
What's the
bar.
pass? The
The
color
color
bar,
bar.
right? Okay.
And that's not even a Canadian term. That was a specific to the salon term. So that's probably not. But so like when you're mixing color and stuff like that, I remember it was like, I think eventually they caved on allowing drinks back there, but like there was no sitting whatsoever. And I'm like,
No, no, no.
this massage therapist is literally 8 months pregnant. Like she is standing all day. What do you mean? What do you mean you can't sit in between clients?
It's
Like
absolutely insane. I had
yeah,
somebody tell me a few weeks ago how their boss rung the maternity ward to try and rearrange her scans because they didn't fit with the salon's needs. And it's like I that
wow.
it's absolutely savage.
Yeah,
It's savage. So
yeah.
I think it's very interesting that even over in Canada, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, and that's extreme. And you know, it's funny because I never, like, until we had this conversation, like, I kind of had forgotten about, and I'm like, no, those are very extreme things also. Like, I think that goes to show how until this conversation, like, and don't get me wrong, like, looking back, I'm like, that was so messed up. And I know that. And especially as I got older, because by the time I stepped away from behind the chair, I was like 31, I think. And so by the end of my career, like, I was definitely recognizing a lot more things. But at the beginning, it was like normal.
But I don't tolerate anything. You do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not a team player, or you're getting pipped against each other for who's the
Yeah.
most loyal. It's barbaric.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of the biggest reasons. That was one of my biggest drivers for what I started teaching, because the thing that shifted in my career was when I started to learn how to market myself, because I stayed at like the salon I went to that was like the really structured kind of like, that was probably like, it was kind of like a running joke that when someone new would start, it was like a coin toss whether they'd return from their lunch break. Cause it was like,
I've
so
seen that. I've seen that happen.
yeah, it's such a strange thing because it was very structured and very consistent. So it didn't seem as off base as it was looking back now. I just don't think that type of salon would work necessarily in this day and age, like with just like the extreme strictness. Maybe it would.
I think the big chains do.
Yeah, and I think what
Yeah.
it is it's like you would be nothing without me. And so
I've
that's
had somebody
why,
say that to me.
yeah, which is an unreal, but I think that's why I'm very passionate about teaching marketing, as you know, because I think that learning how to sell whatever it is you do,
Power.
attract clients, is the key to freedom and not
100%.
having to answer to someone. Because I specifically remember thinking, well, I'm not gonna, like, I could leave, but then it's gonna be a whole other kind of hard because I'm not gonna be making anywhere near as much money. Will my clients follow me? And this was very much pre-social. So I was like, how would they? Like, it was kind of putting an ad in the paper and hoping people saw it type
Yeah.
situation, which I've done.
Absolutely.
So
Punch, little poster in the window, the
yeah.
papers. Lovely. Lovely, lovely.
Exactly. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to for me, is like, the once you learn how to market yourself and attract clients, and you learn how to do that, you don't have to tolerate being treated poorly as anymore.
That is literally my whole jam, you know. So I
Oh, I
love
know.
that.
We have very similar motivation.
Yeah, we don't tolerate this shit, and you can make as much money as you want. The end. That's
Exactly.
it. That's it for today, Jodie. Anyway, so tell us about, what was it like when you had Mason, and what was that like?
So when I first had Mace, I was like, I think it was probably, and this is like wild to say, but it was like I lived in like a bubble. And when I first had him, all I wanted to do was just like be home with him and just like
Of
be
course.
around him, and just like, I like, the baby phase is hard, but for me, it was so joyful. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I don't even know like how to explain it. Like, I always say it was like my baby bubble for the first little bit.
Yeah.
So I tried to go back to work because I had a friend who, she was pregnant, and like our kids, like we were like new mom friends,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
she was like, well, I'll watch Mason if you want to work a few hours, because I had been asked by this person who opened the salon. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, we'll give it a shot. My husband was still a first year apprentice. Like, we could have used the money. And I remember like going back and just like, my friend got too pregnant, so she wasn't really having an easy time with like the two kids. I think it was only a couple months really, and I was just like, I'm not ready. And so, and typically in Canada you get maternity leave, but I did not, because I was in sales and I was technically a contractor. So we just kind of made the decision that, because like I didn't, the reason I share that is because I didn't have like a clientele that I was trying to maintain. Like, I was kind of
Mhm.
just like, I was going back as like a favor to help this person that I had worked with
Mhm.
before. And so I wasn't ready. And then basically, by the end of like, I want to say like 12, 13 months, I was like, okay, I think that I might be able to kind of go back now and start like getting back into the industry and doing hair again. So when I had him, it was very much like I had a really hard pregnancy, very, very easy, very, very fast birth. So I was very lucky for that. I just remember it just being so joyful when I had him. That's the main thing I remember.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
The magic of it. And how
Yeah.
about when you were in the salon, like, and you went back with Mason being what, 12, 13 months old? What was that journey like? Was it a struggle? Were you supported? Tell us about that.
So I had I had a great day home that I found for him. So the hardest thing for me by a long shot was finding childcare that I was comfortable with. I don't know, this is like a weird kind of like niche thing that I do, but I'm very like all about getting a good sleep. Like that's like one of the biggest things. So I was very
So I'm gonna have some kids.
I was like very, yeah, I know. I was very like, okay, I want to make sure he's like well rested. I'm honestly still like this with myself and with my son, where it's like, so this is going to sound so ridiculous, but I tried looking at daycares and I couldn't get my head around the nap situation. So I was looking, so I didn't go back until like a couple months after I was ready to, because I was really trying to find a good solution that I felt comfortable with.
Mhm.
But of course, the second he started going to day home, he was sick all the time,
All the time.
all for 5 years. Like it's literally insane. So the hardest thing for me was just the constant like needing to reschedule and figure things out. And then
Mhm.
like when my husband was home, like it was one thing, but then he would go out of town. So then I was like getting in and out of, because again, like he was a first year apprentice when we had Mason, like what would it be called in England? It's ironworker here. It's like structural steel building,
Okay.
like
Okay.
construction, industrial construction, basically. We needed to both work, and balancing that was incredibly difficult. And like I said, we have no help. Like around where we live. My parents live in a totally different province, and they're really the only ones who are like willing to help. So it was really, really difficult basically the whole time that I was behind the chair. And it was literally that number one thing was the dealing with the guilt of it was a lot easier once I went independent, but it was like I remember calling my mom one day and just like crying because I was like, I feel like I'm failing at home. I feel like I'm failing at work. Like, and like I said, I like to work. I take a lot of pride in what I do. Like I don't
Mhm.
like I want to do a good job. I want to like make progress. Like that feels fulfilling to me. And so I don't just go to work to like check a box. Like I go to work because I care about it. And I cared about it behind the chair and I care about it now. And so I think that was the hardest thing to reconcile for me is that I felt like I was kind of in two in a lot of ways. That was a really hard thing to reconcile.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting actually. The battle of the two version of you basically, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, what would you, if you could change anything for in the
yeah.
industry for mums, women, what would it be?
Oh
Where's
my
it lacking the
goodness.
most? I mean, we are going to run out of time.
Yeah. Empathy. Empathy is
And
literally like
yeah,
if I had to say it in one word, I think that's the biggest thing
yeah.
because like at the end of the day, making women feel like shit is not going to
Oh
make their kids sick less.
no, the end.
Like
Imagine if my thing is like if you've got 20 hours that you need to work. I don't care where you work them. Pick.
yes, exactly.
Imagine the loyalty you would get from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think that's the thing right now is that like I do see a lot of the salon owners that I know that have teams because I also don't think that it's a fit for every single person to go independent. Like there
No,
are so many additional responsibilities and for someone who
yeah,
loves it and is entrepreneurial minded, that's great. For some people who are trying to balance everything, like one more thing on top of it is a lot. And
100%.
unfortunately, I think a lot of the time we're forced to choose between the two. Like we're forced to choose between being an employee and having flexibility. And where I think I'm seeing a lot of salon owners
Let's mix
is,
that.
yeah, is
Yeah.
providing that
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, like, most clients are very understanding. And I mean, I say it all the time. I mean, we're thinking what, like once every couple months, kids get sick and you have to like book times off, sometimes a little bit more in the beginning. And just like thinking, okay, if you've got medical appointments, if you have things that you need to do, like not making such a massive deal about it. So I think flexibility and
Yes.
empathy
I,
and just,
what sort
you
of
know,
power? It's the power trip. Like, do you feel
yeah,
better for making somebody feel so
yeah.
bad about a problem that
Yeah.
they have no control over?
And I think that the whole thing that would really help a lot is knowing and just accepting when you go into the industry and you open a salon, that when you have a business that runs off of other people being able to be there, you need to understand and expect that there will be times where the schedule will get impacted. And if you can arrange for a little bit of flow in that, think about how much easier that is going to make things because it's going to happen whether you plan for it or not.
Exactly. So have that little bit of buffer, that little bit of forward thinking. Absolutely.
Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely. And is there anything that you would like to tell me that I haven't asked you?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think the biggest thing is like letting yourself be a factor. So this is the one thing I would say. So when you are balancing, like I said, two versions of me, right? And I think that what is societally told to us a lot of the time is that our number one priority at all times has to be being a mother and being, what a wife or whatever it is that we are to other people. And this is like probably kind of an unpopular opinion, but and when kids are really little, I think this is different. So like when they're really really little, I wouldn't say this is as much a factor because like genuinely when your children are tiny tiny tiny, like they need you. They are very dependent on you.
Sure.
As kids start to get older, I don't think there's anything wrong with having some boundaries and being able to be okay with prioritizing your work sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
and of course you,
It's honoring all of you. And if
yes,
you're not honoring a part of you, then something else
yes,
will suffer. And I think this
exactly.
is, this is just actually it's the whole plight of woman, right? I want you to be
Absolutely.
100% here and 100% there, but don't you dare
Yeah,
let those cross. I'm sorry, that's not
exactly.
how it's not going to work.
And are we guilting fathers if they have to work late one day?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a firm believer the patriarchy doesn't just damage us;
Yeah.
it damages men as well.
Yeah. Like this is the thing, right? So I think it's just one of those things where like I feel like giving yourself a little grace and letting yourself like the thing that switched for me is I didn't think like when I told you I called my mom and I was like upset because I was feeling like I was failing at work and I was feeling like I was upset because I was really giving most of my power and identity in what I was to other people. So my identity was high performing, successful hairstylist. My identity was mom. I somewhere along the lines and maybe never even found her until my 30s really ever gave thought to like Jodie, like the person, like the and
What does
that's something
Jodie
that I
want? What does
yeah,
Jodie like? Who is
exactly.
Jodie? That loss of identity is massive. And now
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking about what you said. Of do we shame dads for working late? No,
Yeah.
we don't. But
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we absolutely don't.
Right,
There's
exactly, right?
one hundred
So I
percent.
think that's like and I'm lucky because my husband does not subscribe to that. Like he is very much like he will come home from a full day at work and cook dinner
Mhm.
if I've been busy. It's not a thing. Or he'll be like, "Do you want me to pick something up?" Like no big deal. I know that
Mhm.
that's not the case for a lot of women. And so
Huge swathes, yeah, absolutely.
So I want to just be transparent that like I do feel supported in that
Hmm.
space for me. So that is something that I acknowledge is like a massive like privilege in my own life, is that I do have someone who is very much like supportive of like, if I need to say, I'm like, you know what, I have a project that I want to finish. I need to work until after dinner. I'm going to go down and I'm going to work until whatever. Can you put, Mace to bed and do all the things? And he's like, absolutely, of course. So I
Hmm.
do think that like I have that opportunity, but also we teach people how to treat us. And if we can't advocate for ourselves
Yeah,
and along the mindset journey that I've been on in the past 7 or 8 years, probably now, I have very much learned that accountability and like, how could I show up differently? How could I create the space for myself? I wish I would have started asking those questions a little earlier.
absolutely. So, where can people find you online?
So you can find me on Instagram, and that's probably the best place, or go to jodybrown.ca.
Okay. And I always like to end on a little bit of a funny because it gets a little bit dark when you're talking about being a mom. So tell me something mad, weird, unhinged that your child has said or done recently. I've had some corkers, they're amazing.
Okay, I don't have a recent one, but the one that was the funniest to me that I think about all the time is whenever we were at like the store, when he had just learned how to talk, he would point at any man and go, "Dad, Dad, Dad." I was always so horrified, and I'd have to like loudly be like, "Dad's at work, honey." Like he's like, "Is that my dad? Is that my dad? Is that my dad?" And it was like, this is an ongoing thing for a few months. And I remember just every time I go to the store being like, "Oh my god."
It's that lady with the loose morals again.
Yeah, it was really really
Oh,
funny.
bless him.
Yeah,
Yeah, they love to do that. They love to,
yeah,
let's bring some shame in.
yeah.
Right. Oh, thank you so much for coming to talk to me, Jodie. And really excited for 2026, and I'll see you in May.
Yes, I'm so excited. All right, thank you for having me, Kat. This was really fun.
Thank you, Jodie.
And I
That's a
love what you're
love.
doing for the industry on this too, and moms.
Oh, thank you.